Hey, welcome back to SoberNow.com. I'm Jim LaPierre. I'm going to continue our conversation about relationships in recovery and some of the most common mistakes that people make. So, for the sake of today's conversation, we're going to assume that you've reached a point where you've decided that you're ready to date. And my hope for you is that you came to that conclusion before meeting Mr. or Mrs. Right, Ms. Right. Hopefully, you are being honest enough with yourself and with the people that support your recovery that you've had this as an open conversation, which I get it, that can be uncomfortable to do. For all the years that I worked as a therapist with adolescents, I'd be a little bit fatherly, and I would say, "Okay, are you guys talking about birth control?" And they would typically get embarrassed and say no. And I'd say, "Okay, if you're not mature enough to talk about birth control, then you're not mature enough to have sex. It's really that simple." Now, with a teenager, that's pretty clear cut. Much later in life, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, we're looking to start dating, and all of a sudden we feel like we're back in middle school. We feel like we have two left feet, like we're not sure what to do with our hands. We're self-conscious and embarrassed. But I say, if you're ready to do something, then you're ready to be accountable for it, and you're talking about it with a coach, with a sponsor, with people that support your program. So let's have some conversation about setting boundaries and setting limits, because those are vital pieces to any healthy relationship. And these are things we tend to complicate because they're uncomfortable. Boundaries really are as simple as saying, here's what I'm willing to do and here's what I'm not. Setting limits with people is a matter of how often or how much. And that's tough for us because really what it's about is something that protects you. And self-preservation simply doesn't come naturally to us. When we're uncomfortable, or especially when we're anxious, anxiety dictates do whatever makes this problem go away. Do whatever makes this uncomfortable feeling go away. And so, particularly in dating relationships, people in recovery very often rush into sex because we're not sure what else to do, and we were pretty sure they'd like that, so that's what we do. Okay. So the first thing is I've got some accountability on board. I'm talking with people who support and encourage me, and I'm being honest about what my goals are. I'd like to begin dating. I'd like to be more social. I'd like to meet someone. Whatever it is, just be open and honest about that. The next piece is I'm going to meet somebody. And folks are always asking me, where should I go? How do you meet people these days? Folks rely on social media or different dating apps. I'd like to, tell you a million crazy stories about things I've heard about Tinder and Match.com and 100 other sites. But in general, it's a bad idea. What I encourage folks to do is to get out and socialize and try new things where there's a high likelihood they're going to meet new people who have common interests, but there isn't the pressure to date. So, for example, if there's a hobby or an interest that you'd like to pursue, go, do those things. And then whoever you meet there, it's guaranteed that you've got at least a few things in common, right? What's very common for folks in recovery is that we tend to stay dating and interested in people who are also in recovery. And there's a lot of advantages to that, sometimes some disadvantages. I think the bottom line is we feel like only another addict or alcoholic could understand us. We feel like there's a whole million things I don't have to explain if I'm in a program or if I'm in addiction recovery that I would have to explain to somebody who's never experienced addiction. So I get it, but it can be a pretty small dating pool that you're looking through, and oftentimes we restrict ourselves by only seeking out other people in recovery. The next problem, of course, my friends in AA call it having a bad picker. We tend to gravitate towards the kind of people who are familiar to us, which is starts in our family of origin and continues from there. So again, if you come from a healthy family, that's great. You're going to gravitate towards healthy people. If you come from an unhealthy family, there's a pretty good chance that not only do you gravitate towards unhealthy people, but I could also safely make some predictions about what your dating relationships have been like to this point. Chances are you date the same kind of person, partner with the same kind of person, and get the same kind of outcomes. So very commonly people will ask me, how do I know when I'm getting into an unhealthy partnership, or starting to date somebody who isn't good for me? And it's kind of counterintuitive, but I'll say if you immediately feel comfortable, run. Because that kind of familiarity matches up to the patterns that you've had in relationships in the past. If you find yourself feeling uncomfortable, stay. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. I think because we're intuitive people, because we know how to give people what it is they want, tell them what they want to hear, we're kind of intuitively getting a sense of how they want us to be, how they'd like us to interact, and if we're not careful, we'll fall right into that trap. If the person we're relating to is healthy, then they just want us to be ourselves. But in order to be yourself, you have to have a pretty good idea of who that is. If you find that you don't really have a strong sense of identity, if you find that you're having a great deal of anxiety, maybe take a step back. Maybe say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make some more investments in myself and in my friendships before I try dating. Which leads us to the next piece. It's an old adage, but it's a recipe for dating that I've seen be very, very successful. It's a bit corny, but it's friendship, courtship, relationship. The adage really starts out with the idea that when we form new friendships, we're making an investment that always pays off. We're getting to know that person well, and we're getting to know them without clear expectations. What could be a better foundation for a romantic partnership, right? Now, if in the course of getting to know somebody and enjoying spending time with them, you both discover that there's a romantic interest there, great. Feel free to pursue that. And if not, well, okay, you're not out anything. You have another friendship in your life, and ideally somebody else who supports you. And who knows, maybe that person will introduce you to somebody down the line that is a good fit for you. Okay, next piece, dating in terms of what are we doing? And I say that because quite often the request or the suggestion is, why don't we have coffee? And in addiction recovery, coffee is a euphemism. And it can mean, hey, we're just going to go to a coffee shop, have a cup of coffee and talk. Or it can mean, hey, let's jump into bed together, or anything in between. So being clear when you're asked on a date or when you're asking for a date, being clear about what your motives are. You don't have to explain the whole history. But if you want to invite somebody to coffee, then be very clear. It's just coffee, just conversation. That's what I want to do. Do it in a public place. Sometimes if you're meeting at your place or theirs, there's too much pressure, there's too much discomfort. It can snowball pretty quickly. So be clear on what your motives are and why we're getting together. Do it in a public place. Take it slow. I know, it's not what we're used to. We're used to all or nothing. We're used to let me jump in with both feet and figure it out as I go. And my question to you is, how many times has that really worked out well for you? Not just in dating, in life. So those are some starting points. Email me your questions, jim@sobernow.com. Really excited about this thread. I want to explore a bunch more relationship issues. I think sooner or later we're going to end up talking about toxic relationships and some of the big pitfalls that we really want you to avoid. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can help others discover the conversations that we're having here and what we're trying to build together. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks.